We are going to look at the Loft command, and we're going to start in the top view. We're going to go over to Helix, and that would be under Shapes. Grab your Helix button, snap it, and just drag a circle, and you can just raise it up a little bit and click it, because we can adjust these settings after we finish creating. So click twice, and that should complete your creation of that, the beginning of that helix. Let's go ahead and click on modify, and over here to your right you can experiment with some of these settings here. You can the very first one is your overall radius. The second radius 2 is the top radius, but you'll see better when we create a loft what it actually is doing. Your height determines the height of that helix. Leave that at 1. Turns, let's put that at 2. And the bias, all the bias does is it determines whether there's more of this turn up high or down low. So I'm not going to mess with that right now. Also, you've got settings of whether you want to turn clockwise or counterclockwise. Let's get out of that right now. Right click, and that should get you out of that command. Go to the front view and find where it begins down at this point right here. Then click your, in this case, let's just try an n-gon. We'll click and create the n-gon. Of course, with the n-gon, you can also determine the number of sides and everything else. With your n-gon selected, go ahead and click on your modify tab. Make sure that n-gon's selected, and over here where it says sides, you can either increase or decrease the number of sides depending on what you're going to do. I'm going to leave mine at 6 and go ahead and exit that. And my next job is to go over here where it says geometry, compound objects, loft. You're going to get your path, which is obviously your helix, because you're wanting that shape to travel along the helix. And as you can see, if that doesn't happen automatically, then you may have to click get shape and then click the select your shape. But in this particular case, we had already had the shape selected because we had just finished modifying it. So that should create your shape right there. Now what you could do is you could go back here to modify. You could open up Loft, and here you can see where you've got path and you've got shape, helix. Under helix, looking at some of those original settings that we were looking at, you can look at radius 2. If you increase that number, you can see what that does. You can then decrease. In other words, let's put radius 2 up to 2 and see what happens. Put it back to 1. Let's keep both of them at 1. Or you can increase radius 1 to 2 just to see how that affects everything. It really doubles the radius down here to the radius up here. Okay? So Turns, you can mess around with the number of turns that you have. Bias, as we said earlier, either group it up top more or group it down low more. So that should give you a pretty good idea how that works. The next thing that we want to do I'll show you how to make two objects move along this path that are nested. If I go to my front view again and I create, in this case, let's go ahead and create a rectangle. And deselect start new shape. Okay, this circle is in the center now of the square. Alright, I'm going to get out of that command, right click. Then I'm going to go back to the helix by clicking on the helix that has the other shape attached to it. If I look over here where it says get shape, click the get shape button and I can go ahead and select this shape instead. Okay. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to shaded, and what you'll see here if you orbit around is the fact that it's inscribed a hole in the middle of that square. That gives you some idea of how that loft command works. Now, some other settings that you can create to play with, create things, is go ahead and select your shape, go to the very bottom of here, and you can play around with twist. Click on twist, you can see here if you pull this down to say, let's make that 500, negative 500. You can see how that really starts to twist that shape. You can also play around with things like scale, where, you know, if you do it in the opposite direction, say let's put this at 0. Go to small, from small to big in this instance. You can really start to play with the different things. Then what you can do is close out of here. You can toggle in or out of these to see what the after result is. We're kind of both off. That's what you start out with. You can also animate this. And if you go to your auto key, it should set yourself a key. You should set a keyframe there. Then go over here to say the very last 100 spot. Click on your scale, and then the twist, do kind of the same thing. make some modification to it. Okay. And then what I ought to be able to do is just take this off, and let's look at it in the view here. Alt W. So you can animate it if you like. Well, that gives you some sort of idea of how you can modify that and animate it.